Hola. Hi. Hola. Welcome to our Hangout. Latin Heritage Month. It's an honor to be here with the three of you. Before we proceed, I'd like to do introductions with visual descriptions. My name is Melissa Melmira Yinks. I will go ahead and be the moderator for this wonderful group here and your organization. I am a light skin, brown skin Latina with brown hair. It's in a ponytail with gold earrings, black shirt, 3/4 lengths, and 2 visible tattoos. I am in front of a white background with a gold doorknob here, and then some golden curtains to my left. I would love for the three of you to introduce yourselves. Ivy?
Hello, I'm Ivy Velez, and I'm a light-skinned Latina woman with a black shirt on, lotus flower earring. I have a gray background, and I have a table in front of me. You are going to see some sun coming through the window because the sun's setting here, so I just wanted to give you a heads up.
That's okay. Next up, we have, hi, my name is Celso Martinez. This is my name sign, Celso. I am a Hispanic male. I have a yellow t-shirt with the Latinx Student Union here in the front. I've got curtains behind me. Thank you.
All right, hi. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month to everybody. I'm Pelona Ramirez, and I'm from Ecuador. I was born in Ecuador, moved over to New Jersey. I have black wavy hair, long hair, with long dangly tan earrings with a logo on it. I have black framed glasses. I have red lipstick, a white shirt on with a logo on it. The National Hispanic Latino Association for the Deaf, which is the logo on it. My background is black.
Melissa here. Hi. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for the introductions. And so what we'd like to get into now is Hispanic, Latino, Latinx Heritage Month. This is the month when everyone truly takes a look at the Hispanic culture, the Latino culture, and the heritage. And we all feel, I'm sure I'm not alone here, we should have this year long, right? But it is celebrated September 15th through October 15th. And it is very important this month to raise awareness. And I'd be curious to get your perspective for this month. How do you feel about this month? Do you feel like, yes, we should? Do you have some pros, some cons maybe you'd like to share?
Hey, this is Ivy.
Go ahead, Ivy.
Okay, this is Ivy. It's definitely something that should be out in the community all the time because I teach it year round. I think that when it comes up just a little bit, I know people often forget for the rest of the year. And sometimes, if it's year round, people also would get tired of it. So for a month, people get more excited. So there's definitely pros and cons to both sides, but we definitely need to expand on the community and cultural awareness year round, not just for the month, but celebrating it for a month is nice. And it's also nice to recognize different cultures too.
Melissa here, definitely. Celso here. And at Gallaudet University, we have the organization here, Latinx Student Union, which we abbreviate as LSU. And we take on the Hispanic Heritage Month and we try to spread awareness because there are students who are curious. And we have 10 events actually planned for the whole month starting tomorrow. So we are extremely excited. I can see if we had this year round, we would have maybe smaller events. I mean, we could host workshops. We could definitely do things year round to answer your question.
This is Palona. I would say with North America and South America, typically they celebrate Independence Day from the war from Spain. And in Ecuador, in August, I believe it was 18th, they recently they were saying that there was a lot more celebrations because they broke away from Spain, and some of them celebrate in October, some of them celebrate it in November. Sometimes they even celebrate it May, June, or even July. So definitely varies from country to country. But they recognize that all throughout North and South America, or Central and South America.
Melissa, and I want to clarify that sign. That sign is Central America.
So there's Central America, which is the middle part where the thumbs are meeting. And then South America is what you see at the top. And then on the top is North America. So on the bottom is South America. On the top is North America to represent. If you do it with the two fingers sticking out, that's the United States. And so with the hand facing downward, that's South America. That's what that represents.
Melissa here. So let's talk about what we want people to know and remove some of those common misconceptions and perceptions. One of them is about how we would really prefer individuals. I mean, we want to refer the soil here as US, not America, because to your point, Paulina, this is representation of all of the Americas. So referring to the US as America is a little bit egotistical, like America, like the US owns all of America, but no, it is the USA. And if you want to be specific with countries, we need to recognize that we're not just speaking about America in general, correct? Is that how you all feel too?
I agree. I agree. Yes, this is Palona. And also, I want to add to that when you send something to another country by mail, when you address something, you're going to add USA to the address. So you never add America when you're addressing something. The Olympics, another example, what they have on their back, it says USA. It doesn't say America,
That
right?
is true.
Yeah.
Yes. Melissa here. Good point. Ivy here. Oh, nope. Go ahead. Salso, you first.
This is Celso. We definitely want to. I'm thinking about Mexico and the United States and Canada and just having this collaboration and everything. So when I think of America, I think of all of that, not just the USA. And typically, when you think of America, a lot of people say they just focus on the United States, but I just want to make sure that we recognize. I know in other countries, they say, I want to travel to America. And I say, okay, go ahead. You can go to, and then they just go to the United States and they go back, but they don't think about Canada and Mexico, which is involved. And I say, yeah, they're different countries. So getting that knowledge and that awareness out in the world is really important.
Ivy here. When I was 5 and I moved from Puerto Rico, like my grandparents were telling me that I was moving to the US. And when I got into the US, right, I was I moved to the US and I would put that in my writing and people were like, "No, you moved to America." And I'm like, why was I being told I moved to America?" So I felt like almost polarized here because my family told me I was moving to the US, but then I was often criticized and said, "No, that you moved to America."
Mm.
But I always felt conflicted internally. And when I get home to the island, to Puerto Rico, they're like, "How is the United States?" Right? US, I'm like, "It's great, I guess," but I think it's ironic. And often my entire life, I've been criticized. And I thought, okay, things have gotten better and things have changed. But no, we are still going through this. Just look at the map, it'll clearly tell you what's what.
This is Melissa. It's an example of whitewashing, this colonialism and white supremacy. Absolutely. Palona, do you want to add something?
Yes, I was going to say that, when you look at people and the dialect that when they speak, they always say US, right? But deaf individuals, because they're signing America, are assuming that America is being used. I would prefer US. It gives emphasis on which country you're referring to. USA is okay. Other countries in the Americas, when I have conversations with other friends in other parts of the world, they look at the
Mm.
US as the US. People in Central America know that it's the US. Europe, every country in Europe has its own thing. So, for example, there's a sign for Paris, right? It's not Europe that they're kind of generalizing. So, I can see the differences.
Yes, yes, this is Melissa. So some of the other things that I know that's important to all of us to clarify to people out there is when they see the Hispanic community, and to be honest, I think it depends on where you are. But I know here in California, where I live in the West Coast, a lot of people assume that it's all Mexican and that's it. And it's really not. So our community has a lot of different identities. There's Mexico, right? Mexican and. So I'm sure all of you bring your own identities and your own backgrounds as well.
Ivy here. So, and I mentioned I'm from Puerto Rico. Here on the East Coast, I see a lot of deaf individuals get confused. Dominican Republic, you're from Cuba, you're from Puerto Rico. And then I go to California, right? And yeah, sure, that they're all labeled Mexicans. And there's the Mexican food everywhere in Southern California. And I had to really search for Puerto Rican food. It's funny though, but it really depends on where you stand geographically. And it's
Mm.
not all the same. And I think we need to remove that stigma and the assumptions that people have. We are definitely diverse. You have even people from Chicago, from New Jersey, from all over the United States that have different backgrounds. And you can get labeled as a Mexican or even like wetback, even. I'm still getting called different names. And I'm just like, wow, how derogatory is that? It's based on
Wow,
what you
that's
see on
awful.
TV. And I've noticed like maybe in the 70s or 80s, Mexicans got into the film industry. And I realized that I almost said Mexican deaf people. That's not what I meant. I meant Mexican hearing individuals finally broke into the movie scene, but not other countries, right? They didn't break into the movie scene until years later. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's just a common misconception.
Yeah, this is Palona. I just wanted to add I'm involved in a lot of organizations out there, and on the East Coast, there's a lot of diversity out there, mostly from Central and South America. And on the West Coast, what you notice is there's a lot of people from Mexico, because you see when you are in Texas and then it goes up to California on the West Coast. So in August, I went over to Texas and I went over for my friend's wedding. And I went there and started looking around, and I could not believe how many Mexican people, Mexican things were everywhere, but I wasn't seeing any kind of diversity. And it makes sense because Mexico is right there. So in the Southwest, you see a lot of that. And that's one of the things that I've seen for myself. I've gone to California a time or two. I've gone to Texas a couple times, and on the East Coast, it's completely different. The deaf community on the West Coast, the deaf community on the East Coast is completely different as well. So those are some of the things that I experienced when I was traveling, and that's what you get to see.
So here, I would have to say, like during events, during especially the Hispanic Heritage Month, people commonly think that it's only Mexico that we're celebrating. And they didn't realize that Latinx is very much all of Central and South America. So commonly what I see is people signing Mexican or Mexico. And I'm like, well, no, there's Brazil, there's just a bunch of other countries that are a part of this. So we want to expose that and bring cultural awareness to individuals because there are even different cultures within Mexico. There may be, everyone thinks it's the same, but it's not. There are similarities, but they are very much different. So getting exposure to the university here is a part of what we do. I mean, we talk about language, religion, culture, and just everything under the sun. So exposure is extremely important.
This is Melissa. Yeah. Oh, Palona. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. It just came to mind. There's one thing that really bothers me when people say, "Hey, are you Mexican?" And I say, "No, I'm not from Mexico. No, I'm from Ecuador." And I get that a lot. Or they say, "Oh, do you have a passport?" And I'm like, "What? No, why are you even asking me?" You know? It just does that mean that Mexican people, if you're Mexican, then you're just illegal? Is that what that means? I mean, that's not even the case. I'm an immigrant. My family, they were immigrants. And they moved here, of course, to get a better life and a education. And I'm just tired of people assuming and making all these assumptions. So they either think I'm from Mexico or I'm Puerto Rican. I say no. So I have to teach them, hey, ask me. Ask me where I'm from. That's the polite thing to do. Ask me where I'm from. Ask me what my second or maybe even third language is. So LSEC is the language of signed Ecuador, and they know that that's my first language. The second language, my second language is ASL, and I know for many Latino people, they can read and write in Spanish and or they could speak in Spanish, and then they move over here and they struggle with American Sign Language and they're really looked down upon because of that. But the fact is, they already have their native language that they're very skilled in. So just take the time not to judge people, especially if people are immigrants here. I know there was one person that says, "Oh, immigrants are criminals," and I had to remind them. I said, "Look, I'm an immigrant. I was an immigrant here. So I'm not involved in any crime, am I? What about my family's not either?" And they were really taken back. And I said, you know what? This is the United States is the you have the worst criminals here and the worst crime than anyone else because you see all these school shootings. There's so
Yep,
much going on here.
agreed.
So looking down on other people for things that are just not true is just that really bothers me.
Melissa here, that's very true. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Celso here, and this actually also applies to immigration crime. When we talk about immigrants coming into the United States, what we're commonly known for
Mm.
in US culture is that we bring drugs, right? No, that's not necessarily that's not what we come here for. We come here commonly what I hear is better education, a better life. And as a deaf person, they wanted to come here. My family did. We came to New Mexico for a better education for the deaf children. And as we grew up in the culture here, my grandparents are extremely proud, and then to call me a criminal because I went to school here in the United States, that's not a criminal. Making money and supporting your family, whether you're from Central or South America, that's not a crime. I remember at one time in school, and what it really impacted me. I had a student approach me and was like, "You're Mexican, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm Mexican." They're like, "Well, do you have drugs?" And I was taken aback.
Wow,
I was like,
unbelievable.
"What?" He's like, "Right, you Mexicans have drugs, right?" Luckily, the principal saw what the student said to me. They got in trouble, but that really impacted me because Mexicans means you have drugs, and that's the system. That's what people are trained to think.
This is Melissa. Wow. Those assumptions that are out there are very dangerous and can be very hurtful for our self esteem and our sense of identity. It's just, it's really destructive to know how they really view us. Yes, so we're going to go with Ivy and then Polona.
Ivy here. Actually, what you talked about and that misconception can be extremely dangerous. And sometimes what I feel guilty about is using the white card, right? Because I'm light skinned. I qualify, right? So all of these stigmas and all of these labels, and how was I able to grow? I would have to play my white card just to navigate through life. And that is so wrong. We're already oppressed. And then given that type of message to me as a little girl, I have a few deaf teachers and counselors who truly believed in me, but I have to say a lot of them didn't. So I had to use my white card to get through life. And I have tremendous guilt because of that. And this guilt that I have, I then go ahead and teach others, educate others, and speak for my people. I couldn't read or write. My parents couldn't read and write when I first came to United States. And it's like, don't oppress my people. Mama Bear comes out because this is based on my own experience and the culture that I grew up in.
Yes, yes, that's this is Melissa. That's something I've been through myself. When I became a more proud Latina, I also had to also acknowledge my privilege as well. I couldn't just say, "Oh no, we're all the same." Because we all have various life experiences and access to different resources and college and jobs and skin tones and everything like that that's out there. And because there's diversity out there, we have to be honest on where we stand with our own privilege. And we have to use it instead of just saying, oh, no, 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 we're all the same. Let's not even think about it. Because white people don't realize that even internally we do struggle with that issue with ourselves. And I do remember whenever I was founding an organization in Southern California, and it was a Latino organization, and a lot of people would, even in California, they would just step up, and a lot of people were from El Salvador, Dominican Republic, or Peru. And it was very important to them to acknowledge their own cultures as well. So even in Southern California, we were trying to be mindful and not just say, okay, well, everything is Mexican related and this is it, but really acknowledging the different cultures that make up the community. Palona, did you want to add something?
I did, and I wanted to go back to immigration and immigrants. So one of the common misconceptions that U.S. individuals have is, going back to Celso's point, is that Mexicans smuggle in drugs. I do have to say that I've met a lot of deaf individuals who are white, who are from European descent, from Asian descent, and they already know how to get into the United States without a visa. There are other countries that get into US through Mexico, right? So to put the blame on Central and South
Mm.
America is wrong. These other countries are lucky they don't get recognized because they're white. There's that white privilege again.
I agree. No,
Yeah.
that's very true. That's very true. This is Melissa. I want to go back to some common misperceptions. And I know one popular one now, and it seems like more and more people are realizing, but Cinco de Mayo is not Mexican Independence Day. It's just not. So
Right.
September 15th is the real Independence Day. So I just hope most people know that now. And I know a lot of people say, oh, Cinco de Mayo. And I think it's just a good excuse to go out to get Mexican
Eat
food, eat
tacos.
tacos, get a margarita. That's what people think, but it's not. So it's a small victory in Popolana, and that was pretty much it. And then some of the other things is we try to let people know that the Day of the Dead is not only doesn't only happen in Mexico, but it happens in other countries, and they celebrate Day of the Dead. And the most important thing is that we acknowledge that it's not Halloween. It's not. It's not a it's not a Halloween costume, right? I know you guys see that people wear the sugar
Yes.
skulls for a Halloween costume and they get all dressed up, and that's cultural appropriation. All right. So we'll go to Polona and then Ivy.
Palona here. So where I live in my neck of the woods, I've been here for years. My parents passed away and I had to go fly back home to Ecuador and I was culture shocked. I was so used to the funerals here. I kind of expected the same when I got out there, and it was just completely different. It was 2.5 days memorial service, literally from 8 a.m. to midnight. And we, as family members, had to provide the service. And it was just wow, amazing. So then, Day of the Dead, I went and celebrated my father's 1 year. And commonly in Central South America, Day of the Dead is October, November. So we were just went to the gravesite. We were cleaning, put the flowers on the gravesite. As a family, we prayed, we talked, and it was about an hour or two. Paid our respects, and then we left. In Mexico culture, though, it's a little bit different, and it's really nice, I have to say.
Yeah, it's definitely different for everybody. Celesco, yeah, it's every year is when they celebrate it, and the reason why is exposure, but it's not Halloween. It's not a day to get excited. And be careful not to culturally appropriate this holiday because a lot of people who aren't, let's say, Latino or, but they're still, maybe they're a POC, they're still dressing up with the sugar skulls and everything else. And what it is to really hold your family and friends who have passed to hold them close. So it really doesn't make sense to even dress up and celebrate Day of the Dead if you're not of the culture. And the goal is to get together with if you're going to get together and you're going to, party and everything else, that's not the goal of what that holiday is. It's to get together, it's to give back, to have a service, and it's really to honor those family and friends that have passed. And so I know a lot of people don't even know what that holiday is about, and I always explain to them. And I'm getting ready to host another celebration too. I think it's important to expose people to that.
Melissa here. I do get that question from my white friends, and they ask, "How do you feel if we do dress up in sugar skulls and all of that?" And I say, I don't
Yeah,
suggest it on your own.
exactly.
If you are to go to an event, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that. If white individuals go to a Latino event, is it okay for them to participate? Ivy?
It, this is Ivy. It's definitely a cultural conflict. It's like doing blackface and going to a party. Obviously, that's not okay. And so it's the same as with any other culture. If you're gonna put on a sugar skull face, and it's just like, I grew up Catholic, so I would throw holy water on someone, you just, you don't practice it, so keep it separated. And we believe that Day of the Dead is it's such a space where we honor people who have passed that it's not something that you just touch without any respect. So I no, it's no, my intuition is saying no, but it's not my place to decide, but my intuition is just saying no. That's my gut feeling. Yeah.
Yep, when in
Yeah.
doubt, don't, right?
Oh, I would definitely sprinkle them with some holy water.
Paulina here. One person I witnessed flew to Peru. There was a special sacred place. It was an indigenous space, spiritual healing. So this person learned about it and brought basically it back to the US and was teaching it. And to me, that was so wrong. That wasn't something for you to come back to the United States and teach that. That was, I mean, that's stealing one's culture, in my opinion. Also, in Ecuador, there is an island right off of Ecuador. It's called Galupa, which is a historical event, right? We don't have, I'm sorry, a historical animal. We don't have that animal anywhere else in the world. So if a person was to purchase land in Ecuador and they're from another country, they aren't allowed to. Only
Oh,
Ecuadorians are only allowed to purchase land on that specific island. And it makes so much more sense because you avoid people, immigrants moving in, and you really preserve the culture there. And I really respect that and I really appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. So let's go. Again, I would say it was 3 or 4 years ago when I went to Gallaudet. It was it was new to me. And then I joined the Latinx student organization. I was responsible for Day of the Dead, and I started learning a lot and about my culture and about people wanting to just put on the sugar skulls just for fun. And so I just decided to do a lot more education and went to presentations. And on that day, I spoke with the faculty, the higher up faculty, and I said, understand, only Latino students can dress up for Day of the Dead in the sugar skulls, but everybody else cannot. And a lot of people complained. And I said, you have to respect the culture. You just have to. And it's one of those things that you have to learn. Like, you can learn about it, but don't appropriate it. Don't do it for yourself. So that's something that I do every year now.
Listen here, I like that you can learn about it and appreciate it, but not take it and be a part of you. I think that's what we people need to realize is that we definitely cherish our culture. Don't always try to take something that is ours for yourself. We preserve our culture and we want to keep it unique. I know there's a lot of people that want to mainstream it to the US white culture. Like, for example, with Ivy, you mentioned as when you were little, they were trying to tell you that you moved to America and not the US. And so I do see a shift, I do have to admit. For example, in deaf education, bilingualism was heavily favored. And I can see that there's a shift now to multilingual. They recognize that not everything is ASL and English. A lot of us have different languages that we want to preserve. And just because American Sign Language or English is not our first language does not mean that we are not of standard.
I'd like to add something. This is Ivy. In the 1970s, I went to ASD, American School for the Deaf in Hartford, Connecticut, and I had absolutely no concept. Let me go back. I just wanted to emphasize that they did stress with Latino families. with the parents that they did start having a little bit of awareness. They do now, but back then I went to the dorms. I had a private tutor every Sunday. They came over to make me not sign in my Spanish signs, or they wanted me just to learn English. That was all they were teaching me. And they were trying to they were trying to make me get rid of my own heritage language. And so I felt brainwashed just to remove everything that I had known. And it felt like it was a crash course. I had to start lip reading and start learning how to pronounce all these different words. And I felt like my identity was just shook to the core. And now I'm much more proud. I'm cultural recognition. Of course, there's so many different languages that you could add to what I know. And it's just a learning process on how you could make everything that you've gone through fit the needs that you have.
So here, absolutely. And we're out of time, but there is one more thing that we need to mention. And one is just for just individuals and interpreters as well to assume our culture. Don't assume that for one, and don't assume our background. And what when we sign this sign here, it could be Hispanic, it could be Latino, it could be Latina, it could be Latinx. So always ask the preferred word choice that they want. And don't assume that one sign means one word. Any final thoughts that anybody wants to add?
This
Go
is
ahead,
Lesko.
Celso.
Also, yeah, so if absolutely. So if someone's Latinx, I like to be called Latino. But if somebody else who's Hispanic, and then I say I'm Latino, and then someone else may say, "Oh, are you learning Spanish?" And I say, "No, no, no, no. I'm Latino. This is what I'm signing. This is with an O." And so of course it's the same sign, but it may mean different things. So that's something that people need to be mindful of. So maybe should we do the sign and then spell it out? That's one thing I just wanted to throw out there. And of course as Latino, Latinx, and Latina, and there's a lot of confusion with what that means, the feminine and masculine. Is it, or some people don't prefer to even state the gender, and that's why they use the X. Some people say that the X means you're not born in Central or South America, and there's a lot of debate around even the terminology. So that's something that's out there right now, and I think we just really have to find what we're going to go with, whether it's Latino, Latinx, or Latina. And of
Well,
course,
say
yeah, the debate goes on.
that's why it's important to ask. Paulina here. One of the things that I have to say is one of the kind of annoying things when it comes to different cultures, and when they what they do is they'll sign the word but then don't truly understand what that means. And for interpreters, do they necessarily understand the word? No, because they haven't asked. Nobody has asked what is the preferred word choice that we have. And I don't put blame on them because they're still probably just as confused as the Hispanics, Latino, Latinx, Latinas, and the signs that we use. But technically speaking, the US government has sanctioned Hispanic, and because of that, I think it's probably best for us as just a nation to use that sign for Hispanic. I know some of us don't like that term Hispanic, and that I think that should be your responsibility to say this is my sign for Latina. It's always safe to ask.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ivy, I would say the same thing, but I did want to emphasize that we don't have any issues with race, anything like that. But in
Agreed.
America, it just makes it so much more complicated. It's just so much worse here. We're getting it in our faces all the time, and it feels like I'm forced to pick. I'm Puerto Rican. It's so simple. And I just moved to the United States. That's all. Hello. And I feel like once I got here, there's so many more problems. And now there's problems in our own community. And they're asking which one and forcing us to pick. And the deaf community always says, pick one. What's the best? And so of course, I promise to make, you have, Hispanic and you have Latino, you have Latina and Latinx. What's most important is what you feel comfortable with.
Paulina here. And so I have traveled to other countries, and based on what I've seen, it's very interesting, I'd say. And what has impacted me is that in the United States, we have been colonized to look at Blacks, look at white, right? Not at the individual and what's behind their name. We automatically look at their skin tone. Now, you go to Central or South America, you never look at the skin. You look at the name. You don't look at the tone. You look at the name and if they're of wealthy or not. So, like for example, if there is a person who is Black in Ecuador, are they considered Black? No, they would never say that. They would say, I'm Ecuadorian. I met a woman who was like, oh, she was asked, are you Black? She goes, no, I'm not Black. I'm from a certain country. So, but my point is that in other countries in Central and South America, they don't teach racism. I have to say the United States, even to this day, even after BLM, Black Lives Matter, there still has not been tremendous improvement because we still have same issues with immigrants and it's the great debate and it never stops.
Yes, this is Melissa. We still have a long way to go. I definitely agree. That's why I hope people who are watching today, they're not going to learn everything, of course, but I hope they learn a little bit more than they did yesterday and they continue to educate themselves. Of course, this month, hopefully they're involved with different events that are out there and don't let that stop October 15th and then you're just on to the next thing. Please continue this work year round. Thank you for watching.
So here, just the final comment here, and wherever you are in the United States, and if you hear of any Hispanic Heritage Month or any events that are happening in your town, go
Yes.
learn about culture. Don't think that it happens just one time a year. Culture happens every day. We have Black History Month. We have just a bunch of different ones. We have workshops that you guys can, I encourage and implore you all to go learn. That's the only way we can see true change and education. And if you don't, then you won't see the change in the world that you want to see. So I encourage everybody, organizations, events, everywhere, go learn.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Well, thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences today. Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias. Yep.